Welcome to the Living Medicine Podcast, where we talk about ethical medical use of psychedelic psychotherapy, teaching skills, examining the issues, and interviewing interesting people. Now let's start today's show.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sandy Newis, lead trainer and co-founder of the Living Medicine Institute. And this is the Living Medicine Podcast. And Living Medicine is hosted by Living Medicine Institute, which is a training, content, and resource business for clinical and medical professionals who are interested in launching or deepening their practice in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, as well as other psychedelic-assisted psychotherapies as they become available, hopefully soon. And we have a training retreat coming up September 24th to 27th of 2026. So if you'd like to check that out, you can find it at the website. And I am very excited to have Dr. Rohini. Oh, you know what? Would normally ask people how to pronounce their last names, but tell me if I've got this right. Dr. Rohini Kanniganti? Is that correct? Okay. I am really excited to have Dr. Rohini Kanniganti here. She is a board certified family physician in Boulder, and she has served in hospice and palliative care for over a decade, currently working with Mountain Valley Hospice and Palliative Care in North Carolina and Trail Winds Hospice in Boulder, Colorado. She is a graduate of the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, IPI, out of Boulder, where she completed the Integrative Psychiatry Certification, ketamine provider certification, and the psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy program, and she currently serves as faculty there. She is also the palliative advisor for Therasil in Canada and end-of-life psychedelic care program and relationship resources in Woodstock, New York for Cultivating Joy retreat setters. She's been interviewed on a variety of different podcasts and hosts her own podcast series, Sound and Healing and Cultivating Grace. And she also offers coaching through a program called Relational, Embodied Spirituality of Trending or Rest. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Rohini is that she honors context and community within the healing process, brings together science and the sacred, and invites clinicians, seekers, and the dying to stop trying to climb out of the human mess and instead trust the soft animal of the heart body as it masterfully participates in the dance, which is a sentence that I took from some of your writing that I love. So hopefully I didn't botch that too much, but
Not at
there's a
all.
lot of lovely things there. So thank you so much, Rohini, for being here with me. I'm really appreciating having you here. So
Thank you, love. I'm just very honored that someone who's as dynamic in the world, and you practice mindfulness and you're dynamic. We were just talking about the hummingbird, how it moves fast, but also appears to be still
yeah.
at the same time. And you know, it's just it's amazing. It's amazing what you're doing and what you're manifesting, the support that you're giving to many, many people.
Thank you.
And through them to thousands.
Well, I appreciate you for saying that. Thank you. So I was first introduced to you by Jane Gumpel, who was also a podcast guest. And I think it was early 2024. No, it would have been 2024 because we hadn't yet had Hurricane Helene, which was September 24. I'm going to have one of those lives that everything was like before Helene and after Helene. So it would have been before that. And she spoke so highly of you and your work and thought that we might be in alignment. And then that kind of drifted by. But then I did the IPI course myself just to kind of shore up some of my foundations. And you were doing a beautiful teaching on palliative care. And I could tell your wisdom was woven in through that. So that's kind of how we came to be here. So turning that over, I always love to ask everyone, how did you get into this field? So there's, of course, the professional path, like I was a physician and things like that. But, and that's useful. I really want you to share whatever you want to share about that because people obviously want to know the context of that. But also the, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy and your own work and consciousness and somatics. Just if you could just tell us a little bit about how you kind of came to be in this moment in time.
Yeah, of course, when we say field, right, it has a whole new sense, and really that's probably the place to start, which is that we might call it sacred. Um, but a sense of something far larger than the body and the mind, right? And I seem to have had that, as many of us have, since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a really discerning sense, like I had a sword in my hand. I grew up in the Hindu tradition, but even as a child, I knew that separating mind from body
Mm.
was just no bueno.
Mm.
And and so there was a sense inside of me always of wanting to work deeply with people, which I started at a fairly early age. I mean, I became um, I became a lay counselor as an undergraduate. As an RA, went through training as a counselor to show up in that way. I was part of the divestment movement at that time.
Interesting.
And was training people also already in consciousness, but that consciousness at that time showed up as Kohlberg's stages of moral development internally.
Mm-hmm.
And these are just things I was drawn towards meditation. I was drawn towards energy. I was drawn towards um, so much. And even though my path was science, it was something like really clear that I remember when I was 16 years old. It's a story that I tell that I stepped out of my class learning about thermodynamics, and I went, "Oh my God, God is energy.
Ah.
Why is nobody else just falling over themselves like I am at this moment?" So there was always that. There was always this sense that what was going on the outside was connecting and bridging to something on the inside. And that just, then I became a crisis counselor and then went to med school, and I had already gone to School of Public Health at that point.
May I
Got my
interrupt and just ask you? I'm just dying of curiosity. How old
Yeah,
were you when you had that realization about God is energy?
I was 15.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, up until then, right, my brain was quite filled. I come from a pretty orthodox tradition
Mm-hmm.
that has a lineage that goes all the way back to the people who wrote the Vedas. And so that I was already steeped in that. So this is hardly sort of, in a sense, new that my brain would already. I keep saying already. That's an interesting thing. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
stop there because that's not a coincidence.
Hmm.
I just want to acknowledge how much each of us already know
Right.
who we are.
Yeah.
We are already source consciousness.
Right.
So just wanted to acknowledge that, since that really wanted to be said. And and even with that lineage, it feels like I came into that lineage as a
Mm-hmm.
bridge. Because there's plenty of people in that lineage who don't do what I do.
Right.
But that's because no two leaves on this planet are the same, even on the same tree.
Right. I mean, some of us are quite literally just bridge builders and translators. And
Right. And
yeah.
this is certainly what it feels like I came to have fun and play doing.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, and then I went into med school, and I already had a sense of the capacity there. And I got through medical school by saying the mantra, "This is a labor of love. This is a labor of love. This is a labor of love." And then and thereafter, I'm a board certified family physician, as you said. Then there was a there was a doorway into house call medicine, which was seeing people where they live because they can't come to see doctors for a variety of reasons, mostly people in the Medicare and some Medicaid population. And that was a backdoor into hospice. And once I entered, I just felt like, oh, okay. Hi, home.
Mhm.
And because the limbic resonance most hospices are very, very good. There are those who are practicing fraud and taking advantage of Medicare. And I'm so sad about that. But that's across the board, I think, in industry. But for the most part, it's incredibly holy. Its origins, as you heard, are amazingly inspired. Dame Cecily Saunders brings this, and then Kubler-Ross just picks it up and makes sure that the Senate passes a bill that allows people to receive this care, which is really I think of hospice workers as the rangers, in state parks and national forests, that we're protecting the wilderness of
Totally.
the life experience, and to be in it, to be in that limbic resonance. And we're very, very busy. There's just, as you can imagine, Medicare requirements are a behemoth,
Mhm.
but our souls don't get lost.
Mm.
And the hospices I'm currently working for, I just could cry. They're absolutely have their finger on the pulse, the same pulse that God intends for us to, that the universe, right? And I say God, it's just source, it's the light, it's source intelligence intends for us to have our fingers on her. And there's a saying by Meister Eckhart, which I heard from Eckhart Tolle. It's funny, Eckhart. Um, and it said, the eye through which you see God is the same eye through which God sees you. And so one of the chaplains that I love at Mountain Valley says, transparency before God, right? This is it, that there's this, it's the same pulse. And so I'm so happy to be there. And I was there, and IPI Will Vanderveers, I've known him ever since I moved to Boulder, and we were sitting, the first time we had lunch, and we connected in our hearts. And then at the end of lunch, I looked at him and I said, let's play. The same thing I said to you. It's something I say to people that I really resonate with. And then we went through some iterations of what that could look like with healing centers. He developed his own incredible training institute, the Integrative Psychiatry Institute. Thousands of people have been trained, and the intent is noble. It's really powerful. And he invited me to start stepping in. I wasn't sure because I wasn't in the psychedelic world. I didn't grow up. My psychedelics were, God is energy,
Right.
and this easy capacity to feel through nature, which you love, right, and through the natural world, and the intended beauty, the astonishment, but so I wasn't in the psychedelic world, and I stepped in slowly. And I remember my first ketamine journey that I received for training, and I've been here all along. I've been here already. And I was just laughing my way through. And it was so profound. And at that time, the nurse who was taking me into the ketamine experience, her 28-year-old daughter had, who has now died, transitioned, had just been diagnosed with a very aggressive sarcoma. So, as I was coming out of that non-dual experience of ketamine, I asked, why is this happening? Why is there suffering? Which is where I always go. I'm always having a dialogue with the universe. what do we need to know? What do I need to know about death? What do I need to know about loss? And what was amazing is that that question didn't make any sense
Mm,
in that space. There was
mm,
only laughter, not a laughter at, but a laughter with.
mm,
Do you see? It
mm.
seemed to say, do you see? And I remember, I know we're going to come around to talking about palliative care, but this feels really important as I even connect and I'm talking about it. Years later, a couple years, few years, and I've only been in this field a few years, but I had a psilocybin experience. I can say that because psilocybin is legal in Colorado, and again, it was in the context of my own training,
Mhm.
um, and it was a fairly low dose, but I went into, as I almost always do, into a non-dual experience with God, with the universe, and and as I was coming out, I noticed myself holding something that represented my children. And I said to the universe, I said, teach me this bridge between the non-dual and the dual. And and I said, okay, I said the worst thing I can imagine in this moment is something terrible happening to my children, which I think, Sandy, you can relate to.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, as mothers, this really, we can't
Mhm.
imagine anything worse. And I could feel pressure in my chest and I started to sob. And then the experience zipped me into the non dual experience where I started to laugh
I love
because
that.
there was no loss. It was
Right.
all continuous.
Yeah.
And then I would come back into the dual and I cried and I went back into the non dual and I did this back and forth. And as if the experience was saying, now do you see? And I said, I see.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my journey. I'll go anywhere where
Great.
there's sacred play.
So I love that. And that's so interesting because, my own psychedelic sort of lineage, incorporates various forms of like dance and music as well as more internal but there's this piece of the sacred and connection and the body that weaves through all of them. So sometimes people will be like, "Oh, I don't know about like a party." I'm like, "It's not really just a party. Like there's like an intentionality to all forms of that." So I'll just kind of note that. So what I'm hearing for you is that from early on in your life, the connection to spirit, source, God, the connection to yourself, and then your work have been just interwoven, and it's just kind of, this, you're already there and just things just kind of generally are unfolding. Is that accurate?
That is really accurate, and it's so important, because I want to hold that it isn't the things that I did,
Yeah.
but it was that from a deeply restful nervous system, even though, yes, there was plenty of trauma, lots of anxiety, lots to work with, lots of stuff, abuse, abandonment, all of that.
Mm.
But there's something inside that I could rest deeply. And that's where we feel alignment. That's what
Mhm.
alignment is. It's a restful, relaxed nervous system. And that it's not the things in themselves, it's not what I'm wearing. It's the essential nature of who we each are. And
Mm.
that being an accountant can be deeply sacred,
Sure.
right?
Oh, no
If
doubt.
that's in alignment with where our souls are meant to be. So I don't in any way intend to say that there's a specific path that's
Mhm.
correct for all
Mhm.
of us. Yeah.
Well, and so one of the things that, you sent a document to me where you're doing some really interesting writing about, it would be hard for me to fully summarize it, but kind of when did we begin to, emphasize the individual and the transcendence of the self on this individual path versus connecting to group and community and the body and kind of more earth-based kind of pieces. And, you wrote about, I mean, would that be a reasonable like summary in a, sentence or two?
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
I mean, I love that you're writing about that and encourage people to kind of pay attention because it's really rich and beautiful. And one of the things you put in there was a sentence. True healing does not come from isolating the self to find a quiet individual calm. It comes from increasing the richness and depth of the connections within the ecosystem we already inhabit. And that really, I'm going to kind of plug it because we will switch to palliative care, but that, I see the linkage there, like how all the layers are kind of showing up in hospice and palliative care. And but this piece about going up and transcendent takes us away, but self, body, community bring us back, and group and kinship. And, can you just kind of speak a little bit about that? Because that's really, it links in so many things to me.
So many things. And, I just want to give you 100% permission to redirect me when it's time to
Okay. All right.
change directions or to, and I also want to say how good it feels, Sandy, to have you reflect so beautifully and skillfully. And it's not just a skill, right? I feel the heart in it.
Mm.
And I feel my body relaxing because here's this moment of this ecosystem. Of course, my thoughts were, oh my gosh, she's an incredible therapist. Like even here in just this conversation, she's just being herself, her dynamic, vivacious, amazing self, and still listening deeply and attuning to me, and how incredible that feels.
Mm.
And this is the relational ecosystem.
Yeah.
Where, earlier before starting, you said, wow, bringing together mindfulness with connectedness at this level with attachment. This is the profound stuff. Now, I'm just going to start with the broad sweep. I recently, in the last couple months, was reading, based on the recommendation of somebody that I really trust, this guy called Tyson Yunkaporta. Everybody needs to read him. He is an Aboriginal scholar who, for the first time, has brought through, translated the nonlinear consciousness and living of the Indigenous Aboriginal community in Australia out into, as a scholar, as an academic, into the Western world.
Wow.
This book is brilliant. And I strongly recommend not reading it, but actually hearing him narrate it, read it. Because he moves from, in one paragraph, he'll move from sounding academic to casual, to dropping F-bombs, to being incredulous, to being absolutely nonlinear. And in fact, sometimes I went back and listened to it twice. And sometimes as I was listening, it would drop me into the same, just hearing him, because he's carrying it in his body. Hearing him, I was in a nonlinear, non-dual space. So I just pause it right there and just sit. So what he's representing is something that nails it. And he calls it country, that he doesn't. That's a translation of their language for the landscape in which we live, the ecosystem in which we live, country. And I started to, and within country, people have an understanding of belonging in a non-linear way, because you're not just belonging to your nuclear family, but to everything, to your community, and your community includes the soil, the stones. Oh my gosh, as I say it, I have tears coming up, because this is really true. We're in community with everything. When David Whyte, in his poem, right? Says everything is waiting for you. This is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And plants, animals, knowing their roots, knowing their story, being in community. And he calls that kinship. And
Right.
that we're here to be custodians of kinship.
Well, and just to kind of reflect on that for a moment, I incorporate a lot of nature connection work into my psychedelic world. Something as simple as an integration. I just want to invite you to go, connect with something in the natural world that draws your attention and just be with it. You can ask it a question, or you could notice what it might teach you. You could ask it if it's your teacher, or you could just sit and be curious about what emerges. And it's just so powerful. And yet it is just an irrefutable truth. The natural world is alive and these are living beings and they have a wisdom that transcends us. It's just a fact. It's a scientific fact, like a tree is alive. And,
Right.
developing a relationship and just being aware or just being aware of it as a living being is profoundly impactful. And yet it's not new. Like when I teach nature connection, this is not new, like this is just a
Not
reconnection.
new. It's
Yeah.
not new. I mean, I just came back from a silent meditation retreat with Jane, which was incredible.
Yeah.
And I bent down with her at some point and I looked at this mushroom that was degrading, and there were these shiny threads all around it. And I said, Jane, I broke silence. I was very naughty. And I said, Jane, look at the mycelium. This is it. Because this is what is underneath where we can't see it, hidden and deep, profound intelligence
Right.
that is beyond our capacity to even understand. And we can see it through psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
but being with it is completely different. So yes, he says as we move along, we're going into higher and higher levels of the patterns of kinship that we're custodians of.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started, really, I came back to an older question, which was at what point, because it was something that had really bothered me, because out of the country, out of the region that we call India, wasn't that, have come many teachers
Yeah.
bringing with them ideas of transcendence and awakening, but not country,
Mm-hmm.
not the warmth and the interconnection with others. And I started to explore how did that happen?
Yeah.
How did, and it is, I think, hundreds of years and perhaps millennia of a consciousness that it wasn't safe to attach and attune, right? This is what happens. It's from a trauma
Mm-hmm.
lens
Mm-hmm.
when you have been colonized over and over, or where there's a lot of war in your region, your own people killing
Right.
each other. And something had to happen. So a freeze and dissociation happened, a disconnection happened.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's interesting that even in beautiful experiences where we might be sitting together in a meditation with other people, it's a beautiful sense of of a silent knowing,
Mm.
but it's not warm and
Yeah.
it's not close.
Yeah.
Recently, I was doing a meditation. I lead, in a meditation that I co-lead with Jane and David, her son, and another, dear colleague and sister, Sandra Jan, um, a weekly meditation. It was my turn, and I encouraged people to actually wake down, which you had mentioned. It's not my term.
Mm-hmm.
And it came, I think, in the 80s, somebody who was following Arida as a high level person and then just kind of got aghast at the hypermasculine and the separation and the hierarchy and started to talk about waking down. But it's very intuitively obvious to me, because where we are is relational, we're embodied, and and we're here to tend to ourselves in
Right.
sacred devotion. So
Yeah.
then I had people take an elevator, and people who are listening can do that. Take an elevator down into you, and then
Mm-hmm.
come out of the elevator and sit there with whatever weather is happening inside. But here's the difference. I had people imagine that they were inviting somebody to sit with them who they love and trust.
Mm.
Perhaps it's a bunch of people, perhaps it's an animal, or
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And but to feel the closeness, the limbic resonance with others,
Yeah.
which you can't feel on your own. And I we're not here, as you said, we're not here to transcend
Mm-hmm.
connection, interconnection, interweaving, what Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing.
Yeah. Right. It's true. I mean, it's like I used to like when I was early in kind of my mindfulness journey, and I spent a lot of time by myself in the woods and learning how to connect to self. And then I realized that only parts of that translated to being in relationship. Like it's
Mhm.
all fine and good to go like sit on the side of the mountain and learn how to regulate and be in connection to the natural world. And that provides a nice platform from which to move forward. But that
Right,
in and of itself is actually not the goal. Like,
right. And if
that
I
might
could
be
say,
some people's path, but not most of us,
well,
really.
it's a way in which we can be more skillful. But
Mm,
in medicine, right, the first thing we learn in the vows that we take is, in the Socratic oath, is, primum non nocere, first do no harm.
right.
So mindfulness allows us to do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's um, poor baby, there's a cat in front of me with a hairball throwing up.
Aw.
Yeah. Just
Aw.
taking a moment to really be with
Poor
her and
thing.
to, hi, baby. Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Oh, so glad it's coming out. There we go.
yeah.
Okay. So, because everything's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's ecosystem. And, but there is something, and then we stay in mindfulness long enough and we can start to feel this deep joy. It's still individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? It
Yeah.
still comes from avoidant attachment and dissociation in the way I sit. When it isn't coupled like a Venn diagram,
Mm,
overlapping, right? It's not all of it. There's room for the self and there's
right.
room for the other. And then there's a connection. It has
Mm,
to be coupled with, and we're here to do no harm, and we're here to actually do good. And we do
right.
good in closeness and
Yes.
intimacy. My three words are a mature, secure, connected intimacy,
Right.
which
I love that.
feels which feels in the body like
Mm-hmm.
closeness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which
Mm-hmm.
feels in the body like consistency and like warmth
And safety,
and safety.
right? Like
Mhm.
attunement equals safety.
Attunement is safety.
Mm-hmm.
And and self-regulation, so that you can, I love this Christian song that I learned because we moved out to the Caribbean when I was young. Oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder. And how amazing it is to be with others, to be in that
Mm-hmm.
awesome wonder, but
Right?
together in the weather and in the mess and in the wonder.
Yeah, I'm super interested in the potential of the construct of awe as like a change, kind of a change agent in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. I know some people have done that in outdoor-based therapeutic world, but so I'm just aware. I kind of want to redirect us. I'd love to hear maybe just like 5 more minutes on rest, and then if you can also just speak to the role of the body kind of in, talking about that. And then let's spend, a few more minutes on the palliative care piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it all links anyway. So
Right.
after med school in Chapel Hill, I went to India
Mm-hmm.
and to study Ayurveda and homeopathy. I'm not a homeopath. I stopped the homeopathy for a few reasons, and I'm not an Ayurveda, but I learned intensively and in a very, very traditional way through Sanskrit, which is really familiar in my blood cells, right?
Yeah, sure.
In my mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher said to me, one of the first things he said is, when the body's at rest, the mind is calm and alert.
Mm-hmm.
Within a calm and alert mind, one can see divinity within oneself and all others.
Mm.
Now that's it took me a while to unpack that, but then I came back and did my residency and was teaching that, but it is clearly an algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And when we study heart math, right, which has been
Right.
around for a couple decades now,
Mm-hmm.
incredible research about how coherence in the heart actually changes the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from the heart. That's why I call it the heart body. When the heart
Right.
body's in deep rest, that's where it starts. And so this is where, there was just an increasing sense of, we're here to be embodied. We're here to be embodied.
Mm-hmm.
And not to be studying things as concepts. And often religions, including Buddhism, offers itself, and including mindfulness, anything,
Yeah.
right? Noam Chomsky says, you put two people together, you have an institution. Any
Yeah.
institution is going to create concepts about
Mm-hmm.
itself, and all of a sudden it's a concept rather than an
Right.
embodied experience that is in the now, being guided to what is truly essential and authentic in the self. So then, back in January, when the information came through, sweetie, you're going to be stepping forward, not just as a physician now, but as a teacher in this space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I said, what's this thing that I'm teaching called? And what I was guided.
Okay, but what is it going to be and what's it going to look like?
Yeah, what's it? And the word was rest,
Uh-huh.
which harkens back to this idea of restful awareness.
Mm.
But it's relational, profoundly relational, that we
Mm-hmm.
hear this is the kinship, this is country,
Right.
this is the closeness, right? We're here to be relational.
So R, relational.
Mhm. E for
R.
embodied,
Uh-huh.
obvious, right?
Yeah.
And S is this sacred tending.
Mm. So
Mhm.
R for rest. Wait, R for relational, E for embodied, S
S
for
for
sacred,
sacred,
sacred
and T for
tending.
tending. Because
Uh-huh.
what we get to do is really soften. So all of my meditations begin for myself and for others with, let's slow and soften
Mm-hmm.
the body into awareness of the body, into
Uh-huh.
the heart, right? Slow and soften. So when we soften, that we can start to get a sense of the weather inside, the sensations, the
Mm-hmm.
emotions, and our only job, really, the only starting job, is to start to tend here.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be with others with what we haven't tended and attuned to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And the tending is being incredibly tender, the
Uh-huh.
innocence of the program, the innocence of reactivity and responsiveness and to what's going on in the body. And
Mm-hmm.
that this self love then radiates to other people, because the whole point of it is connection to others. It's
Mm-hmm.
not to keep stepping back into my own enlightenment,
Right.
right?
Right.
And into my own experience of joy. It's it's then to radiate this, the heart, as I close my eyes, I can just feel the radiation of my own heart. This is source intelligence, right? That is in all of us. And, segueing to palliative care, one of the things that you heard me speak about in the past is I got really interested in who are the patients and families for whom dying is not a crisis. They don't need a SWAT team, right? It's not an emergency, but it's an emergence. So who
Yeah.
are these people? And I started to really observe and study them because when you're around people who are dying peacefully,
Hmm.
you feel the glow in the
Yeah.
room. I think when George Harrison from the Beatles died, I think his wife described the glow in the room.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And when you've heard me say this in my talk, gosh, why am I blanking? The Microsoft guy, not the Microsoft, the Apple guy, when he died.
Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs.
Yes. When
Uh-huh.
Steve Jobs died, his last words were, "Oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow." And he died like that. So,
Nice.
so what happens when we die peacefully? And who are the people for whom dying is peaceful?
Hmm.
And so there's a deep interest in me. And so many of my own contemplations are all about how do we decrease the fear and how do we increase the peace and even the joy of going back, right?
Well, and it's so interesting because I mean, I see, you talked before we started, I said, let's talk about some of these more kind of consciousness constructs and rest and the embodiment because I want to kind of highlight how I can see how that informs your approach to palliative care. And it's just interesting in my ketamine work, like one of the kind of teachings that I teach both my clients and people who come to Living Medicine Institute is a very simple soften and allow. Like I think cap work can be, I play this game of trying to simplify complicated things and soften and
So,
allow,
and allow.
and we have to do, and in order to do that, we have to connect to the body. And little sidebar, again, separate conversation, but I am kind of intrigued at how the relational components seem to come out more with the women that I talk with, like, and kind of curious the degrees to which that might be gendered. But I'm not saying that it is or isn't. It's just interesting. Um, and this piece about it coming through the body. So, from that perspective, like, how can CAP be helpful for people with palliative care? And then I'm just going to
Yeah.
ask some practical questions about what the entry points into the work can be for
Yeah,
therapists versus, medical professionals.
absolutely. And I want to say that Mountain Valley has been, and the previous hospice that I worked for, the Denver hospice, we used ketamine for pain. And what
Uh-huh.
we and what we noticed is that when we were giving people infusions of ketamine for pain, they were feeling better,
Yeah.
right? And now because the use of ketamine for depression
Mm-hmm.
or PTSD is off label,
Mm-hmm.
except for Spravato,
Yeah.
um, that it's harder for hospices to jump on that bandwagon because we're funded by Medicare.
Right.
But we use many, many medications off label. For instance, we use a medicine called quetiapine, which is an
Mm-hmm.
antipsychotic for sleep and agitation,
Mm-hmm.
especially in somebody with underlying dementia,
Yeah.
and or Parkinson's, and so or many other conditions. So off label is there, but it's a controlled substance that
Mm.
adds ups the ante a bit. But we are noticing how we've we've had experience recently with patients with incredibly intractable depression
Mm-hmm.
turned
Right.
in with pain, right?
Yeah.
And in hospice, we talk about total pain, and total pain is not just physical, but all of
On
it,
every level.
every level. And that ketamine seems to come in, and it's the only thing that worked to relieve somebody of their depression, and that person died peacefully
Isn't that so interesting?
while we were um, working with pain
Mm-hmm.
as the primary, you know, motive to reduce that suffering. So I think that one of the things to know about ketamine for palliative care is that I think if held with observation, it is safe. I would not say take it into the home and let people do it while as we're doing these days with many companies that are
Right.
offering, ketamine for home use, because this is not a population where, unless there is an established safety with that person and with that condition, there are so many indications in our population for palliative care as well. Somebody doesn't have to be on hospice. And we can go beyond palliative care to somebody having chronic illness,
Yeah.
right? Diabetes. Cancer these days is considered a chronic illness, right?
Mhm.
Something where you just feel existential distress, you feel demoralization, and you feel somehow that you've failed life and that that life's giving you an F-bomb to leave.
Really?
That kind of shame and rejection and loss of belonging are profound experiences that can be addressed not only through relational work and attachment work and attunement work, which many people haven't had. And I
Yeah.
don't know that psychedelics are a replacement for that work, which we haven't done because they're temporary, right?
Mhm.
But they might be great adjuncts to work together. And we've seen lots of little studies with ketamine where there is an impact, but it doesn't last as long as, the 4.5 years of the psilocybin studies from NYU and Hopkins.
Well,
But
but that's so interesting. Like, because it's like, okay, so, and what if
but
we
and
combine it with relationally oriented, attuned, somatically focused? What if we combined
wait,
the concepts of rest with that?
absolutely. We combined it with that. It's ongoing, and we have them have boosters of ketamine once
Right.
a month. Like, there's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that, right?
No.
So this becomes a medicine, a sacred medicine
Hmm.
that um, that that can be had once a month in a particular format, or a smaller dose taken maybe for a few weeks. You stop, take for a few weeks, just small doses, and but with the principles of rest. And rest very much integrates in it the Ayurvedic way of knowing the body
Hmm.
mentally, right?
Hmm.
Really, who is this, and how are we connected to the universe? And
Yeah.
from that perspective, that rest, that embodiment is then contextual, and it's kinship oriented, because you and I have the same elements. They exhibit in different ways, but it's a beautiful way of tracking energy, who is God, who's always changing in the body. And yes, and that's a beautiful combination with ketamine, which is softening.
Yes.
And softening is the way, because we can only heal through a relaxed, open nervous system.
Hmm. It's true.
Anything else is an insight, but it doesn't integrate into the body. And integration in the body and into relationship is the only place it counts.
Well, and it's so interesting because one of the things that I, share with clients that, of course, I work with in myself is think by softening the body and just kind of softening, being able to soften into safety, which I think is the hardest part when our nervous systems have been impacted and the humans have become the tigers. But, then we get to be in the energetic reciprocal flow of relationship. It's not give, take, you know, like, it's not like you give to me and then I take, and it's like a flow. We're in a flow, and in flow, we can heal. Like, because if you can open to the like reciprocity of the natural world and the reciprocity of relationships, and that it's not tit tat, give, take, it's just flow, and that which is not necessarily flow state, but then we can heal and we get filled up so that we can be replenished. And I think that's so central to this work. So, and I really appreciate you bringing it, kind of advancing our knowledge in these ways that are both beautifully structured, like rest, and also really rich. So,
So beautiful, right? This is about flow. It's about the
mhm,
connection. Connection
mhm,
is not static. It's a constant movement. It's, the images of water moving here between, it's very
mhm,
fluid and very flexible.
mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, I think of myself as a flower, a flower.
Uh-huh. I love that. Yeah, one of my teachers, Melodoma Somé, he wrote a just an essay. It's available. You have to poke around for a minute. I think it's the healing power of water. Like it's like just kind of that, water is not what people think. Water is powerful. Water transmutes. Water can get around all obstacles. Water kind of exists no matter what. It's quite interesting. For anybody who's interested, poke around and find Melodoma on water, like because that's that elemental piece. So how can people actually, I want to ask you one more practical question about palliative care, and then I'm going to ask you kind of how people can find you and if you have anything else you want to say. But there's a practical question in palliative care, which is most of the people I work with are therapists and other people. I work with medical professionals, MD, and other types of medical professionals who want to learn the therapeutic aspect. But like I don't teach the medical side of it. I'm a psychologist. But the role kind of like for therapists who want to get into palliative care versus medical people, like, what's the pathway if I want to start doing CAP in a palliative care context as a mental health professional? What's my pathway? Do I need to go connect to a hospice center or find a palliative care doc, or like how would one do that?
The number of palliative care docs who are trained in ketamine is very small, but
Right.
it's expanding.
Hmm.
However, if you are working with the physician you're working with and have them start to, um, there are training programs,
Hmm.
that allow um, both therapists and physicians. Like Pradi has a
Hmm.
lovely end of life. I taught one through IPI, and
Yeah.
the the IPI practicums have closed, at least temporarily, so I can no longer
Right.
offer that. But find programs that are training you from the palliative care mindset. I
I
think that's
love
a
that.
great place to start. And these programs, if done well, will encourage you to connect with the patient's teams so that you're
Mm.
not doing something off on your own
Right.
with
Yeah.
them, that the team is involved, right?
Hmm.
And their families involved. That, once you get into working with this population, it's no longer you and this patient,
Right.
right? It's you and a unit, a team.
Mm.
You have to think of yourself as a team working with a team.
Right. Well, and that kind of, connects me to the death doula kind of idea. I could certainly see how if you were taking on that role, that there would be a degree of that also kind of happening to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah. I mean, you can be very boundaried, into the scope of your own work and feel the limbic resonance of
Hmm.
everyone else who's working, as angels to bless this particular patient and family.
Right. Because I mean, I'm aware, as I'm sure you are, of an Indigenous perspective that, we're closest to source at birth and as we get closer to dying. So just kind of that, the veil is thin there in those places.
And the
Um,
veil is very thin in dreams. The veil is very thin when we have the flu,
yeah.
right? When even, or we break an ankle, or, we have gout or whatever it is, and we've slowed down and softened. Veil
Right.
is incredibly thin, and we don't have to take psychedelics. We just need to slow down. And all of a sudden, we start to feel and to perceive from heart intelligence, not
Mm.
head intelligence.
Oh,
And
I
this
love that.
whole
Yes.
whole other a whole other thing. Yeah.
Right. So I'm hearing connect to heart intelligence, connect to the body, connect to
Yeah.
the
Yes.
resonance, allow ourselves to be in reciprocal flow, allow ourselves to be relational beings connected to our animal body, and find the way of guidance through kinship and relationship other than through the mind and this transcendence idea.
Yeah. I'm hearing some teachers that I really like speak to, and I'm one of them. I'm a teacher I like. um, that that the old paradigm is the mental
Mm,
understanding,
right.
and that we're moving, that our evolutionary path is now to move into the body and into knowing everything about this being that we are, this little leaf, this little mosquito that we are. And I'm
Mm.
calling that the heart body.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything else you want to share? And we're coming to a close. And then, how do people find you if they want kind of
Yeah.
to learn more from you or kind of explore? I know that you have coaching available and consultation and a meditation group. And
Yeah. It's funny that I haven't, it's been a year. No, it's been a few months, but that I've started to work on a website with somebody. I don't have that yet. And it feels like things are happening despite that. So people can reach me through, I'll give you an email.
okay.
It's which you can list, which is Rohini, my name, Rohini Kanniganti, at cultivatingthebeloved.com.
Oh, I love that.
And, the message that I would give to you is that one of the things that we in the psychedelic world talk about all the time is connecting to inner healing wisdom. Now, there are other words for inner healing wisdom. It's higher self, it's
Mm-hmm.
essential nature, whatever you want to call it. But that is source intelligence. That is an emanation of source intelligence, and that you can connect through that to everything. And the message that I really want to transmit is the same one that I think I offered during my presentation, which is we have infinite power within us.
Uh-huh.
Everything that we need is right here within us. And I'm saying us because it's not the individual.
Right. I love that.
Mm-hmm. We're in this net of together.
Mm.
We're profoundly connected. And
Mm.
it is through that togetherness that we feel the intensity and grandeur and the magnificence of who we are.
I love that.
We have infinite power within.
Uh-huh. Right. I love that so much. And I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and all of your experience and the flow back and forth between the sacred and the body and the relationship, and also your skill set as a physician and an experienced palliative care and hospice doctor with, in the psychedelic field as well as outside of that. And so I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, love. It's been deep, deep pleasure and honor.
Thank you. All right. Bye bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Living Medicine. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.